Hello, and welcome to the Meditation Center's monthly metaphysical lesson. This month's lesson is The Branches and the Vine, inspired by John chapter 15, verses 5 and 6, and 10 through 12, which read, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this, so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other, as I have loved you. And so it reads. So often we hear the expression, God and I are one, or we are one, or there is no separation, or similar adages. But what do they really mean? I think most of us understand the idea that we're all connected in some way, but our human brains sometimes have trouble grasping abstract concepts. We struggle to explain intangible things, like infinity, or how radio works, or even love. I've heard many people try to explain our oneness with the universe in many ways. Sometimes we're a petal on a flower, or an arm on an octopus, or a drop in the ocean. Jesus' example sounds a little bit different, though. I am the vine, you are the branches. It sounds almost like he's making himself an intermediary between us and God. And that's how a lot of people interpret it. But if you look carefully, you can see the message is the same. We're all part of something bigger that is outside of our range of vision and understanding. Look inward for a moment and imagine you are a leaf on a vine, or a tree, or any other plant. A little leaf, sitting precariously on a tiny stem, maybe close to the ground or high in the air. What can you see around you? Other leaves? Maybe the little stem that holds you onto a bigger twig. Maybe, just maybe, you can see the branch that twig is attached to. If you're in the right position, you might see other plants or trees near you, or the ground beneath you. If you're high up enough, you might have a wonderful view of the surrounding world in the distance. This is how we live our lives. We feel connected with the things we can see around us. And that's what defines our level of understanding about oneness. Some have a more limited range of view, while others have a broader vista. But we're all limited by what we're capable of seeing and understanding. That leaf on the vine might understand that it absorbs light and gases from the air to keep itself alive. It might be aware that it gets some kind of nourishment from the stem that it's attached to. It might even be aware that it will eventually lose its green in the autumn and then fall away. Of course, we are much the same. You and I know where we get our physical nourishment from, our food. We know where we live and what we can depend on to support us. We know that someday we will wither and die too, just like that leaf. But what that leaf might not be able to see is that it's attached to everything around it. It's attached to the plant through the twigs and the branches it's connected to. It's attached to a trunk that extends down into the earth, which it probably doesn't even realize is there. And the trunk is connected to the earth through a system of roots that no one can see. And through the earth, it's sharing a connection with the other plants around it and the animal life that depends on it for its home or nourishment. And that little leaf isn't aware of any of this. It just looks for the sun and does its best to be a leaf. It doesn't even realize that it's connected with the leaves sitting right next to it. Kind of like us. But just like those leaves and plants and all of life, we are connected. Not necessarily in a physical way, because unlike plants, we're not tethered to a stationary spot. We can move around. We have free will. We can do things a tree could never imagine. But we're still connected. We're connected by the air that we breathe. We're connected by common beliefs and interests. We're connected by this vast home we call Earth, and we're connected in intangible ways. Quantum physics has shown that physical objects and life forms have an energetic quality that can affect the things around them, even things that are thousands of miles away. It's that energy that connects us together, sometimes in amazing ways. Have you ever known someone that you just love being around because their energy is so good? Have you ever been thinking about someone and they call you just as the thought crossed your mind? Have you ever had a vision of something important in your life that somehow managed to happen just the way you hoped it would? Have you ever found yourself gathered with people around you who are all focused on the same idea or emotion? These are all energetic connections with your fellow humanity and the world around you, and it's a powerful thing. It's what inspired you to listen to this lesson today. And I think that's the whole point of Jesus' teachings. We spend so much time being I or me, or you and me, that we lose sight of the bigger we and us that we're also a part of. His example of the vine and the branches is perfect. It shows that despite our perception of individuality and separateness, we're all part of something bigger, which in turn is a part of all that is. We are the leaves and branches. Jesus is the vine, and God is the roots. And the world around that is the source of nourishment for all of it. But wait, you might say, weren't you just talking about no separation? Now you have us here and God there with Jesus standing in between again. What's that all about? Well, that's what happens when we choose to see everything as separate parts and components. Think about it. Our bodies are made up of bones and muscles and skin and elbows and blood and guts and brains and earlobes and toenails. Thousands of different things in their own right. But it's all you. And similarly, all of us are part of a body of humanity, which is part of this world, which is part of the universe. The difference is in what you're willing to see. True, the scripture reference not only sounds like Jesus is kind of blocking the way between us and God, it also sounds like we will somehow be condemned if we don't do what he says. This, my friends, is where metaphysics comes in to help it make sense to us. The vine and branches are not a literal analogy. Metaphysically, Jesus represents our spiritual awareness. Greenery represents life. And of course, God isn't a man in the clouds controlling everything. God is everything, including us. How can we be connected to God and not be part of God any less than a drop of water in the ocean is part of the ocean or your left pinky toenail is part of you? Even if we perceive ourselves as separate, like a leaf or a drop of water, we're no less a part of what makes it up. So when Jesus says he is the vine, he's saying that he is our awareness when we realize that we're all connected. Whether we're a little leaf, or a petal on a flower, or an arm on an octopus, or a single hair on someone's head. When we become aware of what we're part of, we become so much more invested. We become so much more willing to be part of it all, instead of being afraid of it or fighting it every day. And that is Jesus' point. He goes on to say that if we ignore our connection with the all, we will not thrive. A fruit not connected to a tree will fall to the ground and rot. A dead branch will not bear fruit and will also rot away, or it might burn. And we suffer similar fates when we try to separate ourselves, whether it's from each other, or from God, or the universe, or anything else. No one is going to stop loving us. No one is going to banish us from our peace and contentment, except maybe ourselves. The separation we perceive comes from our own human nature. We tend to become afraid of the things we can't see, or the things we don't understand. We resent the differences we see among each other instead of reaching out and embracing them. We hold on to things that we might need instead of making sure that everyone together has their needs met. Remember the pandemic? It was only a few years ago, but it's so easy to forget how we responded. Maybe it's easy to forget because we want to forget it. Folks were hoarding more toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and other supplies than they could use in a lifetime because they were afraid of not having any. Or they thought they might have an opportunity to make a quick buck. Of course, this made it difficult for everyone else because now there was none to be found. Tons of supplies sitting in someone's closet not being used. Maybe still not being used today because of the selfish need to preserve the comfort and convenience that we were used to. We see folks doing things like this all the time. Look at all the hatred and bickering that has been triggered in recent years because of greed. Why is it so important for someone to be a billionaire rather than a multimillionaire who already has more than they could ever use? And now we're seeing the prospects of the world's first trillionaire. I commented on this to someone I know, and he said, "I'd rather be a billionaire than where I am now," which is pretty well off by most people's standards. Having billions doesn't help if you can't spend it and help people with it. If anything, it adds more challenges that folks without all those zeros don't have to worry about, or probably could never fathom. Not just taxes, but family, friends, and strangers, all with their hands out trying to get their piece of it in any way they can. It's okay for a person or a company to be successful, but when profits outweigh common sense and reasonable need, it's no longer success. It's greed. If our life is better than it was yesterday, that's something to be thankful for, no matter how little the progress might seem. And even if it isn't going the way we'd like it to be, we're still okay where we are. Life isn't about things. Life isn't about me. Life isn't about wealth. And this is where Jesus ultimately takes our lesson. He relies on wisdom that's so often attributed to him, but is actually found in the Old Testament, Leviticus chapter 19, verse 28. Yes, that Leviticus, the third book of Moses that some folks use to judge and condemn others. But it does offer some wisdom. It reads, "Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself." There are at least 10 other places in the Bible where this lesson is repeated, 6 in the Gospels, and 4 more in the books that follow. Why? Because it's that important. Jesus didn't create the message. He's just passing it along. But he provides some deeper context around it. He says, "If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you." When Jesus says to keep his commands, he's not talking about all the rules and dogma that we associate with modern churches. They didn't exist back then. Or even the Jewish traditions that were such a large part of his life. And when he says, "remain in my love," he doesn't mean that we should maintain blind devotion to him. It means honoring the lessons of goodness and kindness that he taught. Not maintaining focus on Jesus the man, but on Christ consciousness, which he encouraged all of us to achieve. Jesus is telling us quite plainly, if you do as I have instructed, by loving and caring for your fellow humanity, you will find peace and contentment in your life. It's not about adoring a man who may or may not have lived 2,000 years ago. It's about following the example he sets in the stories about him. If we all could just figure that out, our world could be a lot different, couldn't it? Jimi Hendrix once said, "When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace." You are the branches and the leaves. The vine is your awareness, and the roots are the source you are a part of and connected to. You cannot survive without it, no matter how much you try. So here's the plan. See your love expanding out in all directions, wherever you go and whatever you see or experience. If you're feeling angry or frustrated, send your love out even harder because it's needed that much more. It's so easy to be selfish. It's not so easy to love your enemy, which is probably one of the most powerful things you can do. It's hard to love people who use their power to take power away from others. It's hard to love people who kill or abuse. It's hard to love people who don't see things the way you do. If that's what you're feeling, that's when it's time to try that much harder, because we've probably missed the lessons it's all been trying to teach us since the beginning of time. Just for fun, let's listen to the rest of what Jesus had to say as he spoke with those who were most devoted to his cause. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant doesn't know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything I learned from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, so that whatever you ask in my name, or in other words, in the way I've taught you, the Father will give you. This is my command: love each other. Jesus spent so much of his short life admonishing those around him to stop getting hung up in the rules and judgment and expectations, and just be good people. To me, this is the vision that Jesus embraces, not necessarily meant to be a religion in itself, but rather a better, kinder way of living that serves anyone and everyone, no matter how they express their unity with God and all that is, or not. It clearly hasn't gone that way in the ensuing millennia, but that's no less of a reason to avoid learning the lesson. Love each other. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor even if you'd rather not be around them, because if you showed love for each other, it wouldn't be so uncomfortable to be around them. Love everyone. Why? Because we are one. We are part of a great collective called humanity, with more than 8 billion moving parts. No matter what color our skin is, what state or country is listed on our birth certificate, what gender we identify with, what ism we believe in, what political party we love or hate, or how generous or selfish we might be, or any other words or labels that resonate with us. What affects one of us affects us all. And I think that, like Jesus' goal, this was the essence of Martin Luther King's famous dream, which some folks are now unfortunately using as a weapon to achieve the opposite. We can express ourselves in our own unique way and acknowledge and embrace our differences without stomping on each other in the process. Because when you look at us from a distance, we all look the same. Just microscopic ants in a big blue ant farm. And from the other side of the universe, we're invisible specks on an indistinguishable planet in a microscopic corner of a tiny galaxy tucked away among billions of others. But somehow, our mundane, everyday challenges still can seem so huge, can't they? When we love each other, we're loving ourselves and all that is. And if we decide not to, and instead express our fear, anger, frustration, or hatred, we're sharing that with ourselves and each other and all that is, too. What energy would you rather be part of? Remember this: if there is ever any question, love is the answer. Namaste. For additional lessons and meditation ideas, visit our website at www.meditatewnc.org. Thank you for joining us.